Welcome to the Verts podcast. I'm your host, as always, Sonny Weaver. Now we're picking up here in episode 2. I've got the Commissioner Corner podcast boys, Bomber and Lip, here with me, and we're going to roll right back in here to
We're men, Sonny. We're not boys.
Okay, well, whatever. So we're rolling right back in here, and this episode, we're going to talk about kind of the off-season of CFM. Now, there's a lot of things that can fall under this, and so we're going to walk through it kind of in a logical progression. And so the first thing is kind of the re-sign stage. And really in the re-sign stage, I think what we're looking for is some help in the contracts. A lot of times, we're really limited in the kind of contracts we can make. And actually, we had better options in the past with things like front loading and back loading, but now we're kind of resigned to just doing a standard contract that gets spread out in the exact same way for everybody. So guys, what are some things we need from a contract standpoint to really manage our teams?
Well, the thing is that I would just like to see this simple thing come back. I loved this back in the day. I think this was Madden 12. This was a really popular thing, and it was the front loading and back loading of the contract. I actually have a screenshot here pulled up from Madden 12. It's Taylor Mays re-signing, and for the 3 options, he's got 4 years, about $9 million. For the first year for front loading, year 1 cap hits $2 million. For the even distribution, the cap hits about 4, and then in the backloaded years, it's about 6. So it would be a huge help for, you see it all the time. Guys, they shift around their money a little bit to try to get the best roster, but still get their money and still be that kind of teammate, but also still get the money that they want. And I think it would be a huge help to know, hey, I'm kind of limited in cap right now. Would you be able to push some of this money back to the back end of your contract? Or maybe I can pay you now because I know I got a couple big deals coming up, and then the back end of your deal be a little lighter, and that would really help out the team. And I think you could add in some traits that would make players more likely or less likely to be able to accept some kind of deal like that.
Yeah, I'm looking at this from another perspective as well as renegotiating existing contracts. If you get into the off season and the re-sign stage, we're only primarily dealing with people whose contract is up right now, right? I think in the CFM, once again, it's connected franchise mode, so we should have a connected feel to multiple seasons, and I think we should have the option to open contracts where players are either unhappy or they're on the back end of their contract and they're looking for a new deal early, and we could hash out a new deal and therefore save us more money in cap at that point as well.
And that's a good point. I think the restructuring of contracts is something that has been requested for a long time. I think maybe application of that has been tough because you don't want to allow people to just try to restructure contracts constantly. So I think, I think certain guys should have like a rating that they're open or not open to doing it. Right, so that's like a heating up, cooling down. A guy, he may demand a new contract. So a young guy may demand a new contract. An older guy may be open to restructuring a contract in the event that he doesn't get cut. Now, if either of those fail, a young guy that demands a new contract, he can't agree. Maybe confidence takes a 10-point ding to kind of make you say, okay, I don't necessarily want to do this because if I don't do it, he's going to play worse. Or same thing with the veteran. If you approach a veteran and say, I need to restructure a contract, and he says, yeah, I'm not really doing that, he should also take a hit. And that way it makes guys say, is it really worth it to attempt to restructure or renegotiate a contract, or do I want to just write it out?
There has to be a penalty. You're absolutely right, because you don't want people just spamming the restructure button on everybody. So there has to be an opportunity that makes sense, and there has to be a risk involved when you open up that line of communication, because some people aren't going to partake very well to it, and they might not partake well to what you're trying to restructure them to. So they might be open to a restructure, and then you try to really lowball them or not show them the value that they really want. And obviously, like you said, maybe take a confidence boost. I think confidence, is definitely something in the offseason that just shouldn't just completely reset. There should be some kind of effect going into multiple seasons. As I said, again, connected franchise mode. There has to be something coming off an MVP season or most improved player kind of deal, or best cornerback, where a young player takes that into the next year and rolls with it and is feeling good about himself, something like that.
And there's a whole nother thing at this. if you have a young guy who is on, just say you signed a guy, he's not on a rookie deal, but maybe he's 27 years old or so, and he comes in and he is just an absolute star, but he's got like 3 years left on his contract. Maybe he wants more money. Maybe he said, "Look, I'm playing like a stud. I want to be paid like a stud." And maybe you could implement some kind of holdout system or some kind of way that says, "Hey, this guy wants some more money. Are you going to give it to him now or later, maybe?" Something like that. And then you could also do it on the backside of maybe there's an older guy who still wants to play, but he's getting a lot of money. And you could say, okay, let's talk to him about dropping down how much we're paying him right now based on, and it's all based on production, just to eliminate some of those guys who give out really long contracts to the minimal amount, but still have these guys playing at absolute star levels. That could really add a realistic feel to it.
I agree. I think what the holdout slash renegotiate feature would add is it would kind of correct some of the bad contracts people give both ways, really. You overpay someone, you underpay someone. Some of these guys try to use these long 7-year, $500,000 contracts to get young guys locked up and then use the crap out of them, get them really good. But then they got these steals that in real life, I mean, Antonio Brown's a great example of that, and not that the Steelers did it intentionally, but when they signed him to a very decent deal for what he had done up to that point, but he far outplayed that, and so they came back around and helped the guy out there before his contract was up. I think that's a great way to go about doing that. Now, from contracts to free agents, so the guys, let's say they decline the contracts, whatever. Now we're open to free agency. NBL isn't unique, but it is something that's probably not as widely used by a lot of people, and that's 32 franchise owners all bidding at the same time. You've got, the free agency cycle, all of these humans that all have, pretty good logic to them, understand the system, and now this year they reveal the actual number behind the bids. So what we saw early on were guys simply just barely walking their bids up, especially as it got got close to the advance time. We've talked about some different ideas for ways to combat this. Obviously, we implement our own rules, but Bomber, what are some things that you think need to come to the free agent bidding process to really add another level to CFM?
Well, yeah, we obviously had to adjust it ourselves because of that exact scenario you drawn out. I mean, waiting till the last 10 minutes before we advance on a hard time and going up just 1 point to get over and edge somebody out. We had to make it where it has to be at least 10 points, and you have to screenshot all your pictures of your advance so that someone can't just do it within 1 second, which is something we really shouldn't have to do.
Can I add a little bit to that scenario? What the scenario was people essentially calling a superstar player and saying, "Hey, I'll give you an extra $25,000 a minute before the signing deadline." We didn't feel that was realistic, and that's why we had to add some rules to kind of make it feel a little more, take away that idea that somebody's going to sign for an extra, $10,000 or something like that. Those scenarios.
Yeah, it's almost like you're gonna call me late. You have to put it in lifelike situation. Calling me late and offering me a nickel more. That's a bit of a stretch to think that that's going to be the overwhelming reason why somebody goes somewhere. And it seemed like 9 times out of 10 that was actually it. And I think that needs to be changed. I don't like the point system, Sonny. I think that I like the point system, I guess I can say, because at least tells us, because before they would just line up the logos and you wouldn't even know where your bid actually stood. But I kind of like something in between that. I mean, being a little bit blind to what's being offered, I think is a little bit like you're a little bit too disconnected, but knowing exactly the points that they have, I think that's a little too much. So it's got to find a happy median in there for me. As far as that goes, because I think seeing someone's 87 points and you go to 88 points, I just don't think that's realistic as well.
Well, so think about this for a second. The way we do contract renegotiation for us, that the guys on the last year throughout the regular season, you get to make one offer to that guy each year. Yeah. Or each week, and then he provides you with feedback, says, "Hey, I like it, I don't like this, I don't like that." What if we went to a system kind of similar to that, where the guy says, "This is what I'm looking for." You go ahead on free agency week 1 and say, "Okay, this is what I'm willing to pay you." You submit that and you get feedback from the player saying, "This is a good offer, this is a bad offer," right? And then you can also see who all's offered, but you don't know who's winning. You don't know who's winning by how much. right? The guy can tell you, hey, this isn't close to one of the best offers, or hey, this is a good offer, but he's not really telling you exactly that.
I like that. I like that a lot.
That hidden ability that, okay, I know there's 5 guys bidding. Week 1, I came with a strong offer, and he didn't take anybody's offer. So I'm guessing, I need to go higher on my offer, but do I think the Cowboys are bidding more? Well, looking at his salary cap, he can't bid much more than I am. It's going to make guys overpay sometimes. It's going to get some guys some steals, but what it's not going to let you do is just look at it and slowly inch your way up.
And you also feel like you're communicating with the person that you're bidding with. So, like, when you're offering somebody a free agent contract, they might like your offer because of multiple things, which I think need to be more in play: location, prestige of the franchise, the current roster. I mean, there's a lot of things. Scheme. I think all these things should go into a factor on whether a player is really interested on other aspects other than money. So the money can vary based upon how interested he is in other areas. And I think having that thing, well, he really loved my offer. Well, he also loved the offer somewhere else. So then it's really up to him. It ain't about adding another $25,000, which is pretty ridiculous and almost insulting at the point, because trying to outbid somebody by throwing, like I said, a nickel or dime more at somebody isn't going to be a deciding factor when you're making a decision based upon $100 million, $50 million over, the next 5 to 6 years of your career.
And so we'll move along here to the next section, because free agency is definitely an area that we value. But in NBL, what we really value is the draft. We build teams through the draft. And so the draft process, looking at it, they roll out the new draft board. I believe that was last year or this year. I can't even remember anymore. It's been so long. And they're showing you the 3 top stats. My personal opinion on the draft is they've almost made it too easy now. Back in the day, I felt like when you had to pick the stats you were looking for, it gave you more of a feel. I think if they did a better job of diversifying what each team was seeing, I don't think the quality of the team scouting departments really come into play. I think, if you're going in the draft here in 2 weeks, if you ask 32 teams their rating on, let's say, Mike Williams' catching ability, I guarantee you some people are going to call him an A and some people are going to call him a C. And, what that rating is versus what it really is in game, that can be up in the air. But I think there needs to be more mystery behind the scouting process, because right now it's just a little too direct for people. And it makes finding some gems in 32-man leagues, and let me reiterate that, 32 humans that all have the same scouting information, it makes it tough to get some of those late draft gems.
Yeah, I think what you see now is maybe it's like the first round into the second round, it seems like everybody can generally get one good player, that player that's 78 to 81 overall, whatever. But then it really falls off, and I think that might be because we don't really have that whole, buffet board of each attribute that we can look into and really get to know a player. We get like 3 things, and that's determined by the computer. They're given to us, and then we get to go off their combine stats. I think that if you could let us go back to picking out of all of those, but still keep some of the things that are in, like the scouting, or I'm sorry, the combine.
Yeah,
that would really, I think those 2 together would be like a perfect balance of everything that we've had.
Yeah, you look at what it was. We had so many attributes that you could spin on. Excuse me. At one point, what was it, like 20 different things, 15 different things on some players, and now it's gotten to you just get 3 and you get the combine. So they gave us more with the combine, but then they gave us less with actually evaluating the player on things that might actually fit our play style. Now we're just getting their top 3 attributes, which, if it's the same 3, everybody gets, and the scouting doesn't really mean anything, as Sonny said, it really makes it, for a 32-man, actual owner user league like ours, it makes it very difficult to find gems that we could find. What was it, 2 Maddens ago? We were finding guys in the 5th round, the 6th round that had, great potential and good ability to be starters year 2, week 1, And now it's very difficult once you get to the 6th round, 5th round, 4th round, like it should be. But at the same point, someone should be finding somebody. And it's very difficult to find anybody outside of what position. Safety is probably the only one that has any kind of depth like that right now.
Yeah. Safety is like, take safety out of it, because you can actually find a safety to start probably day 1. I mean, unless you already have stud safeties, you can find a starting safety undrafted and even in the later rounds. But so take safety out of it. But every other position, I really feel like after the first, second round, it's just there's not a whole lot there. And like I said, if you could add that whole lineup of attributes that we had in the past and keep the combine, man, I think that would be perfect because it would let you pick and choose what you want to know about the guy, but then you'd also see the actual combine stats that teams get to evaluate each year.
And like I mentioned, it'd be nice also if those guys weren't exactly seeing the same rating on those stats, because then some confusion may push some guys up, pull some guys down, do some different things.
You see that all the time. There's some people who think that Mike Williams right now is the number one wide receiver prospect in the draft, and then there's other teams who don't value him that high. Maybe he's 2 or 3, and there's got to be a reason for that. So if you change your scout is telling you different things, so that's going to make you consider the player in a different way based on each team. I think that'd be a really cool way to implement that.
Exactly. So post-rookie draft, there's the rookie mini camp, and throughout the years or throughout the offseason, there's other workouts, and this is an area where we feel like Madden has maybe missed the boat a little bit. I think a couple weeks of practice throughout the offseason would be a great way to get your feel for these guys early on, start developing the rookies a little bit, and do some different things that I think could create some more value and make you kind of get more immersed in CFM.
Yeah, I 100% agree. There's just a lot of things they could do to touch up certain aspects that really wouldn't require too much manpower. And that's the thing, because, you have priorities and you have a certain amount of time and you have deadlines, but there are just certain things right now with what they've done with the game plan and planning against your opponent and stuff like that. There's just so many things that you can take from that and just add little nuances and little, fresh little ideas that could really round out these things that they already have, especially with the draft board. Many things you can do there, and a bunch of other aspects as far. And I think we brought up, free agent bidding. We brought up scouting. I think that all ties into schemes. I think schemes need to be a big deal in Madden 18. I don't think they've been a big enough deal in 17 and 16. And we said this earlier, but if schemes don't matter, what are you building your team to fit into? If I don't care what this guy is, then I draft him wherever, right? So if I'm a 4-3 scheme and I got a 3-4, outside linebacker, I'm already thinking, okay, where am I going to play him at? Can he guard? Can he play in the zone? Can he cover? If not, where do I put him on a 4-3? Now I'm thinking, okay, maybe he's got to be a defensive end. Does he have the size for that? How's he gonna be being down like that? There's so many aspects that come into it that I think we get overlooked because we're not really having to function within our actual scheme that we choose.
Yeah, I think that it would be interesting to see if there would be a way to add some kind of negative impact to players if they don't fit your scheme. So say you have a certain linebacker and he doesn't fit your scheme. You bring him in anyway. Maybe he shouldn't play like he's playing in his normal fit. There are instances where guys don't play well at certain positions because they're not truly that guy. So maybe I have no idea. Maybe drop down his awareness, 5 or 10 points or something like that, and have it as a negative thing because he doesn't fit the scheme. There could be instances like that if you're trying to play certain linemen as run blockers and they're just not good run blockers, drop their awareness down 5 or 10 points and add that little bit of confusion, a little bit of just miscommunication just because they don't truly fit that scheme. And that would be something you would have to consider during the free agency process and re-signing. Do I really want to bring these guys in if they're not truly going to fit my scheme?
So we're rounding out the off-season CFM or episode here. Where we're going to finish is something that has bothered me for quite a few seasons now, and something I think needs to be fixed. They do a good job in the preseason, the cut down days, and the practice squad we talked about, great addition this year. But one thing they haven't fixed that has to be corrected is the preseason schedule. Now, the first year of preseason schedule, it normally matches up with what's actually going on with release, but year 2 they revert back to the same schedule. And I'll go as far to say it's the same schedule basically every Madden at this point. So year 2, you're playing the same schedule, and if you play 7 or 8 seasons in a CFM, you're playing the exact same teams every preseason, and some of them are even division games. It's just amazingly frustrating that this has been something overlooked for so many seasons.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on this. I mean, we might be the only league that actually plays preseason every season. We use it as a little bit of a break. We do a 24-hour advance. I don't know if y'all watching right now actually play the preseason, but yeah, it's the same opponent every season, and it doesn't really give you that fresh feel to a new season with new players, with young guys. You got to make cuts. Now they have the practice squad, another great addition for Madden 17. I want to know how my guys are going to stack up against other talent rather than the same teams that I consistently play. And it might allow certain guys that were drafted later or guys that were on my practice squad last year to kind of stand out in different situations and different teams, different play styles.
Yeah, I love the preseason because it does let me throw guys in there whenever, let them play, see how I feel with them. But like you said, you play that same schedule 6 to 8 times. By the third time around or so, it's kind of the same thing, and you don't actually get to learn. You get to learn about your players, but you don't get to learn about other teams and try to figure out some other things that are important. So changing that up will get you that feel, because sometimes you only play a team, like say you're in the AFC, you only play an NFC team maybe twice in in our cycle. So it's kind of tough to get to play everybody sometimes, and I think preseason kind of would help with that if you gave it a new schedule each year.
And one thing I wanted to also say is when I play people in preseason, I see somebody that they have and I go, wow, who's that guy? And I'll write the guy's name down and I'll watch him and see if he gets on the practice squad or see what he does with them. When I'm playing the same guys after 2 or 3 seasons, their practice squad and their young players, I'm already aware of them. So if I could play other people and get to see their talent against my talent and go, wow, I kind of like that guy. Oh, that guy got put on practice squad. Now I might be interested in taking him up. I catch an injury bug or something, and I want to bring him into to my team and give him an opportunity based on what I've seen in the preseason. But playing the same personnel over and over again, it really just limits that ability to really scout other teams as well as scout their really, really deep roster and see if anybody could fit and plug and play in holes that you might have.
And so we wrap this session up with a plea to John White and EA. Please, if you're going to do anything, at least fix the preseason schedule. It's driving me insane, and I think a lot of us are all in agreement on that. And so that is it here for episode number 2. Now, make sure you are leaving feedback in the comment section on this video. Tell us if we're right. Tell us if we're wrong. We can do some follow-up if there's further questions on that. And so episode 2, we wrap up actually going through connected franchise mode. Make sure you guys check out episode number 3, where we're going to sit down and be talking about the gameplay itself. So make sure you stay tuned. Follow along. We'll be back with more 4 Verts podcast.